What is it?
The main thing I got from it was like this sense of feeling seen and validated.
Well, why does it have to be this way?
This book was placed in my hand for this moment.
Insightful, learned a lot, wrote some quotes that I'm ready to like paint on my wall.
I love this book!
That we just kind of pull out some of the big themes that we see and talk about a few different ones.
I apologize if most of my contribution has K-pop references.
Alternative book title, The Feminine Mystique Part 2. You were really just gay all along. Welcome to Book Club.
With Julia.
And Victoria.
We are two lifelong friends who read a book and talk about it each episode.
This is a podcast where we explore new perspectives and we use books as tools for personal and community growth.
This week, we are reading The Banks by Roxanne Gay and Ming Doyle, a graphic novel about a multi-generational Chicago family who makes a living by robbing the homes of corrupt rich people. So it's a heist book.
Specifically, this family only robs wealthy white people.
Yes.
They're a black family in Chicago. Heads up, if you haven't read this graphic novel, spoilers ahead, we will talk about the entire thing. And it's a heist, which, you know, is fun. And there's tricky moments and things and all that stuff. So this is your official note. If you want to hit pause, go read it, come back, or just keep listening ahead because it's also fun to read things even if you know how it's going to end. Sometimes more fun.
Sometimes more fun. Also with heists, like, it's similar to romance, where it's like, you know the plot going in. You know they win. Like,
right.
You know they get together, you know they win, you know how it ends. That's kind of the fun of it, is the rich people get their comeuppance. Shameless plug time. If you would like to support our show, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever your preferred podcast platform is, whatever your heart desires. If at any point you find yourself shopping for books and want to shop for books from some independent bookstores in North America, maybe, perhaps, you can use the links in our show notes. Anytime that there's a book linked in our show notes, it will go to our affiliate page on bookshop.org. If you go through that link and shop for any book on our affiliate page, we will get a very small kickback, which helps us buy books for this show. Finally, if you would like to join the book club for, personal newsletters about books or autism from me, or if you want to participate in giveaways, we've got our 100th episode is coming up very, very soon. We're going to be doing something cute for that. Or periodically we do a film club series where we review some kind of book to TV or book to film adaptation. So we've got our whole Pachinko series on there. So it's $3 a month. If you'd like to become a member, go to buymeacoffee.com/bookclubwithjb to join the party.
All right, so let's talk about The Banks. I picked up The Banks at a comic book shop in North Hollywood, and I was definitely buying a book based off its cover. It looks really cool.
It does look really cool.
It is all shades of green and black. It is like the silhouette of a woman with like a badass floral tattoo up her hip. And in her silhouette is two different men's faces and two different women's faces, which we learn later is the evil Gregory Mencken, rich man who kills people. No, it's not Gregory Mencken, it's his boss.
Mm-hmm.
The boss who's even richer and kills more people.
Yeah.
We have Cora and her mother, Clara, and boyfriend, who we learn his name eventually. It's Winston. Who knew that? Not us.
We just called him White Boyfriend.
White Boyfriend is also on the cover. But in big block letters, it says Roxanne Gay. And I was like, oh my gosh, Roxanne Gay wrote a comic book. I want to read it. Because I think she's really cool and I like her writing. And it was set in Chicago. So I'm like, home run. I'm going to buy it. And then when I was checking out, the store clerk was really great. Anyone who works at a comic book shop especially is like so excited to talk to you about the books you're buying.
Yeah.
I think at a traditional bookseller, they tend to be quieter. Like, they're not going to chat you up. They're just going to ring you up. But if you have questions, they'll talk with you about books. But, like, people at comic book shops are like, let me tell you what you're about to experience. And he was saying that TKO Studios that put this book out, their emphasis is about releasing entire storylines all at once. So usually comic books, you get, like, individual issues. And you have to, like, collect them all and follow the story. But, like, TKO will release, like, all 6 issues at once. And also sell it in like a trade bound, which is what I have. It's the version that's all bound together instead of 6 individual little comic books. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. I think they also are trying to like do something different in the comic book space, which I find refreshing. And they also are working to kind of, I think this is my rough estimate. Someone who's more familiar with them might know more, but my rough estimate is also they're trying to kind of do what a lot of other like comic books and manga series do, which is then make a TV show version.
Right.
And so they kind of get the story out there in the comic space, hopefully get traction to turn it into a movie or a TV series. So anyways, I read the entire thing on a flight from LA to Chicago, and I very much enjoyed our strong women characters who all find love and purpose in their lives, but it's also all set about like a heist, which is really fun. And I liked seeing the rich evil man get what's coming for him. But as we'll talk about in this episode, I did feel like the story moved almost too quickly. And on the reread with like an eye towards like, okay, let's think about the pacing. Because Julie and I were talking, we're like, something about this feels a little off for us. On the reread, I was like, yeah, this is paced so quickly. So we'll talk more about that. But that was my experience obtaining the book, reading the book. And then I flew it across the world with me so Julia could read it.
Yeah, so Victoria very kindly brought me this book. But she had been talking about it for a bit. All I knew about it was called The Banks, and it was written by Roxanne Gay, which was all I needed to know. I was like, it's a comic book by Roxanne Gay, let's do it. I was down for whatever. But what I had decided in my head was that the banks referred to like riverbank.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was imagining this like super serious, contemplative, like multi-generational long family narrative that takes place by a river that was like I sort of had this kind of tone and feelings. Like, you know, there are so many movies or books that are called by, like, the name of a house or the name of a forest or a river or, you know what I mean? Where it's like, it's all about the place as a character and the family, you know, everyone's very serious. And then, you know, that's kind of what was in my head, I guess. So I sat down with it while Victoria was visiting. And the first scene was like a robbery. And I was like, okay. I, you know, recalibrated and was like, oh, okay, it was all full of fun surprises because I really had no idea what I was in for. And I didn't figure out that the title was named after the family until I finished it. I was like, oh!
They are the Banks.
Right, but I guess the way that I would say it would be like the Bankses, because Banks with an S is their last name. So to make it plural, multiple people, I would say like the Bankses, which is probably not correct at all, but it just, Banks, it feels like a plural of a money bank or a river bank. It feels like a plural of a noun rather than plural of people. So I went on a fun little journey, and I think it was partly because I really didn't know. I was like actively adjusting my expectations as I read this book. I felt kind of confused a lot of the time. So I was having a lot of fun and really not knowing what was happening most of the book. So I had to kind of figure out, like, what was it that made this, like, hard to process? And so, yeah, we sort of talked through, like, the pacing and stuff, which we'll get into later. Overall fun, I would say. But I have a very weird experience reading. But tell us about the author.
Yeah. So I mentioned Roxanne Gay is a name I know. You might know it as well. But here's maybe some things you didn't know about Roxanne Gay. Or you do, because you know a lot. I don't know. Julia's giving me that look like, what are you saying? Okay. Roxanne Gay's writing appears in a lot of places, including Best American Mystery Stories 2014, Best American Short Stories 2012, Best Sex Writing 2012, A Public Space, McSweeney's, Tin House, Oxford American, American Short Fiction, Virginia Quarterly Review, and so many more. She is a contributing opinion writer for the New York Times. She's the author of the books Aidi, An Untamed State, and the best-selling books Bad Feminist, Difficult Women, and Hunger. She's also the author of World of Wakanda for Marvel. She has many, many books forthcoming and is also at work on television and film projects. So she's busy. She also has a newsletter, The Audacity, and a podcast called The Roxanne Gay Agenda, which is a lovely podcast. You should go listen to it. Roxanne Gay was born in Nebraska to Haitian parents and started her undergraduate studies at Yale. This was an interesting tidbit I was reading about in an interview she gave. She took a detour to pursue a relationship in Arizona, and then her family couldn't find her for a year. And
Oh my
I'm like,
God.
what is that story? And eventually she did complete her bachelor's degree at Vermont College of Norwich University and went on to get an MA in creative writing from University of Nebraska. And she has a PhD in rhetoric and technical communication from Michigan Technological University.
Wow.
She has taught at several universities, including Eastern Illinois University, Purdue, and now is a visiting professor at Yale, Temple, and Occidental College. Like we said, she's busy. What a life. She gets to like write a bunch and then like all these like really cool schools, including like the school she attended but didn't graduate from, are like, please come teach here. And she's like, one semester, I'm busy, but I'll give it to you. And then she just gets to teach her classes. And wouldn't that be incredible to take a class from her? Let's talk about the illustrator, Ming Doyle. This is her bio. Ming Doyle was born in Boston to an Irish-American sailor and a Chinese-Canadian librarian. In 2007, she earned her BFA from Cornell University, concentrating in painting and drawing. She has been working as a freelance illustrator and comic book artist ever since. She's known for her work on The Kitchen, which is now that film starring Melissa McCarthy, Tiffany Haddish, and Elizabeth Moss. But The Kitchen was originally a comic book, and that's what she illustrated. Ming Doyle's also illustrated Mara, Constantine Hellblazer, Anatomy of a Metahuman, and Girl Over Paris. The book, The Banks, was originally published in July 2019, and Roxanne Gay is currently working on writing a TV series based on this graphic novel. So that is one of the many projects she's got coming.
Wow. Okay. Well, as busy as those author bios were, the summary is equally so. So there's a lot of plot contained in a very small amount of space. The story takes place in approximately 2 timelines. So there's present day, and then there's sort of a gradual flashbacks to the past. In the present, we follow Celia, who's a big shot investment banker and the only black woman in an office full of white men. When she gets passed up for a promotion that she has rightfully earned again, she goes to her mother and grandmother, 2 professional thieves, and says she wants to join the family business. They plan a heist to steal from one of Celia's most wicked of clients. A crooked rich guy who basically, he just thinks the whole world belongs to him and he just like wants everything for himself and doesn't give a shit about anyone else.
Women are not allowed to say no to him.
Yeah, exactly. He's not good. It's so gross. It's just the grossest. They have some run-ins with a police detective as well, Detective Vasquez, who has been tracking them, their family, for years. And then the heist also ends up bringing up old family history in the process. But they do succeed in getting the guys arrested. But then in the past, we see Celia's grandmother, Clara. There's a lot of C names, and we had to Google them all before doing this episode. So if you get confused, it's okay. So Celia's grandmother, Clara, met and fell in love with Melvin Banks, a professional thief. She ends up joining him in his work. It becomes a family business, and they also bring their daughter, Cora, along once she is old enough as well. And when she's not, they leave her in the car, which is funny. But things go south when Melvin does a job for a very crooked drug dealer and ends up getting framed and sent to prison. And when he's old and he gets out, he's killed to prevent him from talking. So then the heist in the present day crosses this guy who had him killed again and allows them to, like, get their revenge for on this drug dealer and just generally bad dude. And then Cora, so the daughter of the two thieves, Cora also has a daughter as well and ends up falling in love with her OBGYN in the process, Addie. And it's very cute. So the two women get married and raise their daughter away from the family business, which we don't really get an explanation for, because they don't tell her about it until she's about to graduate from high school.
She's literally filling out her FAFSA, which I think is like the most ridiculous time to tell. Yeah. She's like, Mom, what do you do for work? I have to write it down on my FAFSA.
I'm like, she's never asked this whole time? Girl's like 17, is never asked.
Well, to her credit, Cora tries to be like, I stayed home. Like,
right.
Mama Addie went to work as a doctor. And then it's like, well, Cora, you did something. What did you do? Oh, and that daughter is Celia.
Yeah, Celia.
Okay.
I probably didn't mention that, no. Yeah, so Celia, who's our main character in the present day, gets really angry when she learns what the family business is, creates a lot of tension, and so she tries to be super, super successful, quote-unquote, legitimately, in contrast to the rest of her family, and so that tension is sort of worked out as they try and work together. And there's a lot of comparisons made between bankers and thieves. So there's a lot happening.
And we didn't even mention Winston, the boyfriend.
Oh, yeah!
Who, again, we don't get his name until so late in the book.
Yeah.
At least, I mean, maybe we get it early and I missed it, but yeah.
Yeah, Celia's got a boyfriend who, like, works with her, and she starts working as a thief, and her boyfriend's, like, confused, and she's doing espionage, and he's like, what are you doing? And she won't tell him. The usual.
He wants to marry her.
And she's like,
She says, no, I'm too busy being a
busy.
thief, but I can't tell you that I'm a thief. So he gets sad. He thinks she's cheating on him.
There's a lot of drama.
It's dramatic. And then in the end, he's like, oh, you a thief? I mean, I'm an investment banker. It's basically the same thing. I'm on your side. Let's work together. Last panel is this beautiful shot under the Eiffel Tower of the Banks women and Winston just, like, living their life abroad with all the money they stole from the guy. And it's like, Who are you, Winston? We don't know.
Okay, so let's get into it, because we're getting ahead of ourselves. We have a lot of feelings about Winston. Okay, so this book, we really liked the story, the bones. It's got good bones, but it just moves so fast, and we wished that we would have been able to, like, savor it and experience it and kind of sit with it more. But it's just all kind of thrown at you so fast that you don't really get to process it. And when we sort of talked through together, like, why did it feel like so much at once? We were sort of looking at it again, and we realized that, like, the pacing in comic books is, like, dictated by the visuals and the way the panels are laid out and how much dialogue there is on the panel, and also particularly how many panels you have in a row that show one action taking place. And this book is very dialogue heavy. There's a ton of dialogue. There's rarely a panel without dialogue. So you're mostly just reading. You don't really spend a lot of time looking at the visuals. And you rarely see more than one panel depict any particular emotional or physical moment. So you rarely get to see movement. You just see snapshot, 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 with a ton of dialogue on each one. And so you don't get to spend a lot of time. There's no silence. There's no process, physical process. And so there were a lot of scenes where we wanted to spend, like, some more visual time, sort of watching it unfold, rather than just reading someone explain their feelings.
Yeah.
So you have an example, because you have the book with you right now.
Yes. So I wanted to give first an example of the beginning scene that we thought worked really well, which is the opening heist.
Yeah.
In chapter 1. So I'll just walk us through a few panels to get I know this is not how comic books are meant to be read, which is, they're not supposed to be audiobooks, but here we go. We open and it's a car parked at night on a dark street, nice big homes and lush trees. It says Evanston, Illinois, 1972, which if you know anything about Chicago geography, Evanston is on the north, very white side of the city, historically. Okay, we get a panel. We see the man dressed in his 70s garb, looking very 70s. We see him from the back. We see a woman from the back. They're facing the house. The man says, "Now remember." And the woman says, "I know, baby. I know. Keep it tight and fast. In and out." And then we have this cute picture of them kind of close to each other. Him seeing, standing behind her. And they're both cute and we can see their faces. And he says, "I love you, sweet girl." And she says, "I know you're not trying to get some sugar from me right now." He says, "I'm always trying to get some sugar from you." And then the next panel is them walking. It's from the perspective of the door. They're walking towards the house. But for now, let's get this job done. Image of the woman sneaking in. A little dialogue as she lets him in the back door. They find a fancy desk with a hidden safe behind a painting. And we get a little play-by-play of them robbing the house and leaving. And a little bit of dialogue, but not much. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole 2-page spread of them stealing from that one house. And that's setting the stage of 2 characters stealing. And we get 3 full pictures of it, or 3 full pages of it, of all these panels. Mm-hmm. It's really great. We feel we get a step-by-step of now they unlock the safe, now they pack the bag, now they put everything back, now they leave. Whereas a lot of other times, we don't get that. It's so fast. We're wait, what? I think another reason that scene worked for me is because it's the very opening and we can have a lot of questions and we can establish things like intimacy and skill very quickly with just a few meaningful looks and body language and the success of their job without too much talking about it. But there are scenes where we definitely wanted more, especially with more, once we're further along in the story and we are expecting the characters to be more developed emotionally. So for example, there's the grandmother and granddaughter. So Celia and her grandmother, Clara, who's the woman we saw at the very beginning of the book. There's this tension between them, but it isn't always explained why there's tension, except we assume Celia doesn't like the family business. Clara is bitter that her spoiled granddaughter doesn't recognize that she wouldn't have anything without the family business. But it was also difficult because there's these scenes where there's still tension, but we're not really sure why they're fighting or that they're still fighting. And then there'll just be explosive moments where Cora will storm out and tell her daughter and mother, figure it out, put your stuff behind you, or I'm not working with you guys. And we're wait, what? They have shit to work out still? We haven't really been brought along for that whole journey. And then when we finally get the resolution, it feels okay, we weren't quite sure what they were fighting over. And then we really aren't sure because in the end, it's 4 panels.
So it's literally 1 page, one side of a page.
Yeah, 1 page split into quadrants. The top left quadrant, the 2 women are sitting on a bench outside of a restaurant, I believe. Celia says, "My mom says we're exactly alike." Clara says, "As if. You're spoiled and ungrateful," she says in the next panel. And Celia retorts, "You're mean and a crook." Clara says, "Proud of it." There's 1 panel of them glaring at each other saying those things. The next panel, they're both smiling and kind of laughing. Celia says, "Oh yeah, I can't be mad at that." Clara responds, "Call one of those Uber cars to take us to your mom's house. We need to figure out what we're going to do. Mencken doesn't get to keep his fortune and provide cover for Alenko while Melvin lays cold in the ground." And then the final panel is them leaning towards each other, smiling, and Celia says, "That we can agree on."
And that's it.
That's the resolution. We don't know what they're fighting about. We just know maybe they both have a moment that they're realizing they're stubborn, and they okay, You're stubborn like I'm stubborn.
But then the immediate turn, the line I think that's so fast is, "I can't be mad at that." That just comes out of nowhere.
It's Celia, you have been mad this entire time.
Celia, that's your whole character, is that you're mad at that. Specifically, that your family are thieves. Like, what do you mean you can't be mad at that? And then it's all fine? I don't know. It was so fast. And we didn't really get to sit with them. There's no panel that doesn't have dialogue in that moment. We don't get to watch them think or process these emotions. It just goes immediately from, you're a thief and a crook and proud of it, to, I can't be mad at that. Within the span of a second. And then you're just like, wait, but you were mad about it.
And we hadn't yet established a relationship before. Like, we hadn't established, like, a young Celia with Clara, like, being really affectionate when she was young.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know, as the reader, what their history is. It looks like she was raised, you know, in a multi-generational home. It seemed like she was upset with her grandfather passing. So it's like, okay, did she have a close relationship with her grandparents? It seems like it. Because we know Cora did have a good relationship with her parents. And so I think that was also difficult for me, is it kind of assumed that, oh, okay, I guess Celia hasn't always been mad at her grandma, but when did it start? When did it change? We don't really get that. And so, yeah, even if we don't get the full backstory, because I know they're limited on pages, they're limited on how many panels can fit on a page. Like you said, I think having that extra space to have an emotional beat, to maybe even just see Celia kind of like bring her defenses down. Like maybe she like slouches. Maybe she kind of like sighs to the side. Maybe she remembers something that happened. You know, maybe we're shown a memory she has, either with her grandmother or in another, maybe there's like a parallel experience that Celia's like, you're right, like I don't know everything about you. Let's work together. That would like help move that emotional beat for the reader as like, okay, I can track how your emotions change during this scene. Because yeah, we don't get internal dialogue at all. And I was going to get ahead of myself, but there's a couple other scenes we want to talk about. First of all, Winston.
Yeah.
Winston, the boyfriend.
Winston, the white boyfriend.
I don't know if the listeners are tired of this yet, so I apologize. Let me explain some panels again. At the very beginning in chapter 1, after we see the beautiful 70s couple, which we learn on Melvin and Clara, you know, rob a house, it goes to Chicago, Illinois, present day. And we see Celia walking in, and there's like a conversation happening about a new partners were going to be introduced. And there's a comment that says, Clay, Celia, I hope you're ready. And Celia says, I was born ready. And then just some white dude, we don't know who this is, Clay, I guess, says, that's a responsibility I'm more than willing to assume. Potentially same white dude in the next panel. We don't know, because it's hard to see his face. Is talking with Celia, and it seems, you know, they're really intimate and they want to leave. And she's like, no, I need to work. She calls him babe. And then 2 panels later, they're kissing. And we're like, is this Clay? And then later we learn his name is Winston. Yeah. And I'm like, is he Winston Clay? I don't know. I'm confused. We don't see him again until flip, flip, flip.
The new partner is announced.
Flip. New partner is announced. Again, generic white dude with blonde hair. We're like, is this Clay / Winston / boyfriend? We don't know. There's chatting. Okay, the announcement from the big head honcho guy about the new partner, and redhead guy we've never seen before goes, greed is good, and like fist pumps, which is really funny. It's great too, because like, I don't know what happens at investment banker promotion announcements. Yeah. I assume it's this. It's like a champagne tower and someone fist pumping to greed is good. It's great. So then they go to announce, and they announce Anderson, Livingston, Whitney. Come up here, Anderson. Everyone looks back at Celia. Also, white boyfriend is standing behind her. We don't know who the actual F is. This guy with 3 last names.
Anderson, Livingston, Whitney.
I thought the first time I read it that the boyfriend got the promotion.
Yeah, same.
Because I did not track who it was, and we don't see 3-name dude walk forward. We see boyfriend grab Celia's hand for a little toast. I do appreciate the whole next page is like basically no dialogue. We see her walk out with her partner, and like the other guys working at the firm are like side eye, like, oh man, that sucks. She slams a door to her office, and then we see 3 panels of her like really upset, and then like sitting down at her computer, and her boyfriend is like on the other side of the door being like, babe, and that's it. So we get some emotion. She seems very upset.
Yeah.
But it's confusing because we don't really know who's this white guy. Do we like him? She's dating someone at the firm, but it kind of sets up the firm to be like the scum of the earth, of like just greed is good, fist pump, yeah. Promote the non-existent white dude we've never seen over the one black woman in the office. It's really hard to trust him because he's like on the side of the scummy people. I don't know.
Yeah, well, okay, and then immediately that's the inciting incident. Her getting passed up for a promotion is the inciting incident that makes her call her parents and be like, hey, I want to join the family business. I've got a target for us. She's angry, right? So then she immediately starts going into this whole thievery heist business. And so things immediately start getting tense between her and her boyfriend. And he isn't happy and she's not lying. She's not telling him the truth. But we never get to see them, like, what they're like together.
Yeah.
How we don't know how important he is to her. He doesn't seem that important because she keeps brushing him off for her own things and her own family. And we don't even know his name. We don't know. There's so many white boy names.
He's always Babe. And so then when we
Babe.
finally get his name and he introduced himself to her moms and is like, hi, I am Celia's boyfriend, Winston.
And we're like, oh, wow.
Oh, that's your name.
That's your name. Yeah, he hasn't met her family. Like, my thing is, like, if you're gonna have a white love interest in a story like this, where it's about, like, generational wealth and a black family in Chicago sort of stealing the wealth back in a way, from these super corrupt, rich, white billionaire assholes, right? If that's the plot of your book, and then you have a white male love interest who works for some of those assholes, you really have to establish that he's different. Because we are automatically not going to trust him and not going to want her to end up with him. And we're going to assume that some other dude is going to come along. Like, we need to believe that their relationship is good and that he's worth bringing in. We really have no idea. And so they don't really put in that groundwork early on. We never even see them at home until things are really bad.
That's what I want. I want a scene where, like, maybe we don't get Celia walking into the office. Maybe we get, like, her alarm going off and she's answering emails in bed or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he's, like, really kind and, like, brings in breakfast and is like, you can have a moment to yourself before you have to talk to those idiots or whatever. Or, work assholes will always be there. And she's like, not all of them are assholes. And he's like, you're right. You aren't. And she's like, and you aren't either. And it's like, that's, like, just, like, a little bit. Or even just, like, a nod to, like, when I first met you on the intern rotation, I thought you were going to be one of them, but, like,
right.
I'm so glad you're different. Or maybe he's the one that's like, I thought I was going to be surrounded by all these pretentious dudes that are like my dad. Or, like, what, does he have issues? Like, what's his angle?
Yeah, what's his deal?
And then he's like, and then I found you, and, like, you make working there, like, enjoyable or something. I don't know. I want something more than just, like, I'm horny for you, which is, like, basically all we get from him at the beginning, which also adds to, like, ew, do we like him? Yeah, that's what I want. I just want, like, one page. Doesn't have to be long. Could be a couple panels before she goes into the office to establish they live together, they're important to each other, maybe a nod towards there's some family things, but they both agree we don't talk about family.
His name is Winston.
Yeah. There's, like, a little, like, picture on the nightstand that says, like, Celia and Winston forever. Like, 2010. And we're like, oh, okay. They've been together for a while. And his name is Winston.
His name is Winston.
Like, that's just all I wanted.
Well, because also he makes such a dramatic shift. He never seems to have a problem with the way that the investment banking world works. He never expresses any qualms that I remember.
Yeah, there might have been like one comment, maybe. But even then, I'm like questioning myself.
Yeah, so then like, how do we know? Because then she eventually tells him everything and brings him into the family business. And he gets one panel to think about it and then immediately responds with, well, I'm an investment banker. I work for investment bankers and we're all basically crooks too. So it's fine. I will join you. And you're like, we have not seen any of this line of thinking. We haven't seen him change at all. Has he always thought this way? And if so, why does he work for them? You know, if he's always thought that way, him working there makes no sense. But if he hasn't always thought that way, we need to see him change. And we need to see Celia change him. And for him to then be on board. There's a lot of his character that I'm just like, I don't feel like he's earned his spot on their little crime family show. He needs to put in some work. He needs to tell us his name. But speaking of quick turnarounds, also, the one that really bothered me.
You got so hung up on this.
I got very, very hung up on this, is the cop. So there's this Detective Vasquez, and all we know about her is that she is like a dog after a bone. She just will not give up. She's so determined. She's like, I know that the bank's crime family is like right under my nose. I can smell it. And she's like hunting them relentlessly and is constantly bringing them in for questioning and tailing them and whatever. She shows up at the climax of the book, the night that they're supposed to be robbing this guy's house. Technically, they're robbing him electronically because they're stealing all his crypto, I think. Anyway, so she shows up. The bank's grandmother and mother, so Clara and Cora, are in the car. Celia is trapped in the house, and they're like, we don't know what's going on. The family rolls down the window, and Detective Vasquez leans in and is like, what's going on? Why are you guys here? The family says Celia's stuck in the evil guy's house. And then the cop is just like, okay, cool, fine. Let me just real quick drop my personal vendetta against you that I've been chasing for literally years, even though no one has believed me, and just go arrest this dude who I've never heard of before on the word of my arch nemesis. I think that in one panel, she has that turnaround and then she calls in backup, takes in a whole crew of people and arrests this guy and frees Celia. And you're just like, what? Like, what? She didn't get to see, she's just has to take it completely on Clara's word. Completely. She doesn't see anything fishy going on. She doesn't have any kind of gradual turn. Just like a sudden, one panel, sort of, we need this to happen for the sake of the plot turn. And I was like, I needed to spend a solid 2 more pages on that. I need an argument. I need them to see something fishy's happening. I need something. You gotta give me something. Because I do not believe that just happened. Yeah, that one really bothered me.
Yeah.
I was like,
it also
what?
bothered me when Vasquez comes in with backup and like Celia's being threatened with a knife. Vasquez comes in and she says, I don't know what the hell is going on here, but you're all under arrest. What? And then the evil dude is like, do you have a warrant? And she says, from the look of things, I don't need one. From the look of things, Celia just kneed him in the crotch and ran away. There's no one, like, she's not being held with the knife anymore. And Vasquez, when she's like handcuffing Alenko, says, Victor Alenko, you're under arrest for unlawful imprisonment, among other things.
What are the things?
But she went in with suspected kidnapping.
Yeah.
Like, that's why she went in, and then it's like, unlawful imprisonment, and it's like, you were just suspecting that he was kidnapping her on the word of her grandmother, who you already thought was fishy. I'm glad she did, for the sake of the Banks family. It was great.
Right.
We liked Detective Vasquez in the end, because she helped take down the real guy. And Clara's like, you have to think bigger. like, this guy's done worse than my family has ever done, which is, like, kind of a confession. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's like, we can't establish that this cop has one thing and one thing only that she wants, which is to take down this crime family. If we want to believe him more, I kind of wanted her to be more nuanced then. Maybe she's like, this feels like the case that's, you know, seems really fishy, and maybe it's going to be maybe her motivation is to, like, go up the ranks of her profession, and she just needs, like, a really big get to, like, prove herself as a detective. In that case, Clara telling her, like, hey, there's, like, a bigger guy to take down. If her vendetta is not against this one family, but instead, like, I'm here to make a big get so I can prove myself as a detective. I don't know, just some notes, just some things I want to see fleshed out more.
Yeah.
In conclusion of this part of our discussion, because there's a little bit more we want to chat about. Overall, I think we want more showing, less telling, which is honestly not something you would normally be asking of a comic, because it's technically showing so much more than a novel would. It reminds me of, in a previous episode, we talked about N.K. Jemisin, and I mentioned a quote from her in N.K. Jemison's work to adapt her novels into screenplays, and she's also written graphic novels as well, and she talked about how she had to do a lot of work to move the internal epiphanies of the characters in her novels to make those big revelations action-oriented events, so you could see it happening in film or see it happen in the graphic novel. And I think this graphic novel could benefit from maybe changing some of those internal dialogue and, like, those internal emotional changes, making them a bit more external and giving us a moment to see them, instead of just assuming they had an internal emotional shift. That when Celia was sitting on the bench with her grandma, that something happened. And she's like, you know what? I was wrong. Let's work together. Let's put our differences aside.
Or even some thought bubbles. Like, that's a thing.
Yeah. There are no thought bubbles in here. That's a good point.
No. There's only dialogue bubbles. There's no thought bubbles.
And then I think in terms of the whole story, it actually moves very quickly into the actual heist as well. Julie, I think you mentioned in a conversation we had in the past that in heist movies, we usually don't get the proposition of, like, and now we're going to have a heist until, like, 20 minutes into the film, or, like, end of Act 1. We get at the end of Chapter 1 of 6. And so usually in a heist, we get a lot more time to develop those characters and develop their relationships, establish who they are and what they want, in more time than we do get in this story.
Yeah, so usually the pacing of heist stories is Act 1, you're just establishing the problem. You're establishing all of the characters and who the villain is and why they want to steal the thing. Act 2 is the longest part, and it's like doing all the planning. You know, that's my favorite part. It's the fun part, is putting all the pieces together.
Some planning.
We love planning. so dorky. But yeah, it's like, you know, stakeouts and, like, logistics and, like, oh, actually we need a computer guy. Do you have a computer guy? And then your Act 3 is like the heist itself. And then the very end there's a turn, some kind of reveal at the end, typically, of, like, how they pulled it off, and then success, right? That's sort of your pacing. Whereas this one, it's like, we have one chapter where immediately we're in the heist, and then Act 2 is very, very long and complicated.
And it's interspersed with some of that, like, you know, initial buildup of who these characters are, too.
Yeah, you're getting the flashbacks and everything.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure out when the sort of the final heist really starts, I guess. It feels like we're about to start it a bunch of times, and then it doesn't happen, and then it...
For me, I think it happens when Celia comes in and she's like, we have to do it tonight. Like, Mencken has decided to move his assets quicker than I originally thought. Because then that's the catalyst to actually going through with it, and because he changed his timing, they're caught off guard, and they don't have as much time to prep and plan as they were going to. And so that's what ends up making it kind of dangerous for Celia. More dangerous.
We wanted to think through, like, some similar media sort of structurally, right? So thinking about heist movies, as I was just talking about, they're action films. You know, so there's a lot of action sequences with very little dialogue. Like the final heist has very little dialogue usually. Or there's like a dialogue scene contrasted with an action scene. You're sort of cutting back and forth. And then there's usually some kind of training or espionage sequence where there's very little dialogue. Like there's a bunch of sequences where no one's talking. And then you sort of contrast that with moments of everyone sitting around a table like talking and being like, okay, what are we going to do? And we have this problem, and arguing about what to do, right? So you sort of go back and forth. So they are very fast paced. You know, that is sort of built into the genre, but it's very visual because they want to hide stuff from you, you know, so that it's sort of a reveal at the end, sort of how they pulled it off. So they do a lot with music and sound and then physicality to do a lot of the storytelling for you. And so when thinking about translating that sort of genre to a graphic novel, from my understanding, like the whole point, comics, graphic novels is to like make a movie on paper, you know, so you sort of visualize and write down the sound effects, and you have multiple panels to display the movement, and the internal dialogue is sort of visually constructed and all these kind of things. Whereas this book didn't really do that. And then it also made me think of manga, which I haven't been reading for very long. I'm very new to it. But from what I have read, I feel like manga artists are really good at visualizing and drawing action. Like there are whole pages where no one's talking, and it's just, maybe there's a big moment where there's like a big whoosh, you know, and so you see the spiky lines of the air moving, and it says whoosh in big letters, and so then you see the person in their sort of action stance, and so you see them sort of kind of move across the page, or you have multiple panels next to each other where it's sort of from second to second, you sort of see in real time them in this action sequence. And part of me wonders if like the genre has evolved over time because it's been translated into TV, into anime so much, that maybe that they're like better at thinking about, well, how would this translate visually? Or maybe some of the artists cross over. I'm not sure, but yeah, in terms of comparisons, I think that's what I'm maybe looking for, is like, I feel like it should feel like you're watching it happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I thought that was the point. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I think you make a really good point. Like, I've noticed some of my favorite comics that I've recently gotten into have that really fine line balance between moving the plot forward and giving us a lot of emotional beats. So I really enjoy Brian K. Vaughan. He's like a huge name writer. He wrote Paper Girls, which is like the spiritual predecessor of Stranger Things season 1. And then I read Saga, which is like his huge thing that he's known for, with the artist Fiona Staples. And it's like this epic story. But in each individual chapter, the plot doesn't move super fast.
Right.
Like things happen in every chapter, but not like as much as we're establishing in this. And maybe this is one of the constraints or the new things that TKO Studios is exploring, is like, if you're going to put out a 6-issue story, it has to be incredibly tight because you don't have much space to do it. But it also needs to be a small enough story for you to accomplish in that time frame, because things like Saga have been going on for like 80 issues now or something, 70 issues. I don't know exactly. And so there's a lot of time to build those relationships and introduce each character like one by one, instead of like, here's the entire family, here's the plot, here's all the things that need to happen, and let's make some cool action sequences. It's kind of a lot to ask out of 6 issues. I liked your thought about manga too. I think I was thinking of, I've only read like one manga. I've seen a few anime. I'm very new to the genre. But Vern is reading Chainsaw Man, which is like a teen boy shonen manga series. Shonen, I'm butchering the definition, but my understanding is like fighting, where it's like, in this episode, I'm going to be taking on this big monster, and there's lots of action. And like in an entire chapter, like not much happens because they're like prepping for the fight. And the next chapter, we're prepping for the fight. And the next chapter, we have the fight. And then it's like after the fight. and it's still after the fight. And that's the entire volume of the manga. But you're like, this is great because I have all these panels of all the action and it's all happening. And the action has a lot of space to be there and be visually appealing, though you do lose the speed of the plot. It just makes it quite slow. It makes me think of the first shonen I watched was Hunter x Hunter. And I was like, oh my gosh, we've watched 4 episodes talking about something they're going to do.
Yeah.
Training for the thing they're going to do.
Yeah.
And then we're going to watch 4 episodes of them doing the thing they were training for. The plot moves so slow, but that's like part of it. And I think, my small, very early nascent exposure to comics and manga are that you kind of have to, it's a fine line between balancing developing your characters and developing your plot and giving room for the action. And sometimes you just have a lot of issues to get there.
Yeah, I was literally just talking about that. I'm watching My Hero Academia with one of my friends here. I was talking about how pacing for animes, you know that you're not really going to get into the central plot and meet all of the characters for like 10 episodes, at least. Maybe 12. Like, the pacing is really slow. And you'll have, for fights, you'll have at least 2 episodes per fight. And as they get bigger, it gets longer. So you could be watching an entire movie length's worth of one fight scene. Or sequence. For someone who's, like, on American brain, you know, where, like, I'm used to American pilots, like TV pilots, you have to introduce the plot, the central theme, all of your characters need to be established and in position for sort of the main action by the end of one episode. So in like 30 to 40 minutes, you have done so much work. So yeah, I feel like this book, The Banks, is like American pacing. It's like on, you know, in a medium that maybe doesn't work with that very well. It could also, something that I had to continue to remind myself while I was reading this book, is that, like, my favorite graphic novels, books, whatever, are the, like, super slow ones. Like, super slow. Almost nothing happens, you know? Or where it's, like, mostly visual and it's very artistic. So, like, to this day, my favorites are The Best We Could Do by Tibui, which has these huge, gorgeous art pieces that are kind of so visually stunning and is kind of abstract. So you get to sort of see what's going on, what she's feeling, what's going on in her head. And then also I sat down in a bookstore in Paris back in November and read all of The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, which is like, I think would be in this category where, you know, it's a visual book with just a tiny bit of text, but all the text is like stuff that's just gonna make you cry. And it's about friendship and life and like these really big themes, but it's mostly just like beautiful art of like these 4 animals hanging out. But what I realized the common denominator with both of those is they were both artists first. And even something like Persepolis, which I also really loved, she was an artist first, right?
And a filmmaker, yeah.
And a filmmaker. So she's a very visual person first, and then she's putting text on. So there might be a pattern there of like more my taste as well that's coming into the discussion here. Whereas Roxanne Gay is like a writer first. You know, she writes text. So I'm curious if that had an effect.
Yeah, it's interesting to balance, especially when I'm like it's actually kind of fun when I'm like really new to a genre or to like a form, which I'm very new to the world of comics and manga. I like have these big, strong impressions and ideas, and I'm like, actually, this might just be my taste, or like this might just be me and like the 4 things I've read. Like, I don't know, I can't speak to the whole genre. It keeps me humble. Okay, I kind of got ahead of myself earlier when I'm like, let's talk about Heist. So now let's actually talk about Heist.
Yes.
more in depth because we love a good Robin Hood heist. Steal from the rich, give to the poor. I was thinking back to some of my favorite heist shows and movies, and I think I consumed all of them between the ages of like 10 and 16. So a lot of these are dated references and they're for kids. So Catch That Kid was one of my favorite movies. I had to go look it up because I'm like, what was that movie? And it's got this epic scene where like this girl who's going to break into something that her mom had built, but there's some sort of element of like they're robbing a bank to obtain money to pay for an expensive surgery that one of them needs for their father or something. And the girl goes in and she's like, what's the password? And she like tries a bunch of things and it ends up being, she has this like memory. Her mom's like, I think about you every day. And she tries her first name and that was the password. I'm like, what freaking bank allows the password to be like the IT director's daughter's first name? I don't know, but it worked in 2004. It was a great movie, and they like climbed things because banks apparently have a lot of things you can climb. It was great. And I also loved Leverage, which was a TV show. It's so cheesy. They came out with like another series on like IMDb TV or something like that, and I watched it when I was sick one day, and it like couldn't hold my attention anymore. I was like, oh no, the show I loved, and I like can't hardly deal. But it was my favorite thing in high school. And I had like the DVD versions where you could like, I'd watch the episode and then I'd watch the director's commentary. Like that's how I watched the whole thing. But it was an episodic TV show that follows a grifting crew. And they, again, work to steal from the rich to give to the poor, who usually got screwed over from some corporation. And the backstory of the lead character that kind of follows through the first season or two is that his son died when his insurance denied some sort of life-saving procedure, or there was like too much red tape. They couldn't like approve it fast enough. And so it follows him as he tries to take down like mega millionaires who owned that insurance company. And like every episode is helping someone who got like screwed over by the system, like get their money back or get something. Because we love to see the big guy taken down.
Yeah, we do.
What I loved about Leverage especially is that you get a lot of the behind the scenes. So you see the grift, usually from one point of view. It tends to be the person being grifted. And then there's a replay showing all the... Sometimes you open on the grift happening, and then they give all the backstory of why, and like how they planned it, and all the characters doing their sneaky shit behind the scenes. And then we get a aha, that's how they did it at the end. And I really like that because I like planning. I like seeing the plans being made and being executed.
Dude, I am so similar. I like... It's like my favorite parts of like the Ocean's movies. Ocean's 11 is the best, but you know, I love watching all of them. Is like them talking through all the technical bits and like sitting down with maps and pointing at stuff. Like they're talking through their plan, they're arguing. I love that shit. I love making plans. And it's so satisfying to watch. Like I find that much more fun than watching them put it into place. Like I will watch, I think when I was a teenager, like I would watch Ocean's 11 just through like Act 2. Like I wouldn't even watch because the final heist is only really tense the first time you watch it. Because once you know the twists, it's like not a surprise. It's like not, and you already know what they're going to do because they've just talked about it for, you know, an hour. So I would like skip that part and I would just watch the middle. So yeah, I think that was something that I was hoping to see in the banks was like, they have some behind the scenes talk, especially when Celia's showing them how to like use technology and how to like hack things.
Which apparently she learned at college.
Yeah. But we don't see a lot of her doing that, actually. Or her, like, explaining how things work. Like, I would love to see more of, like, the details of that. I was so fascinated by that. I was like, I would love to know more about, like, what their actual plans are. And then, of course, I also love the TV show Casa de Papel, which is, like, a show, multi-series heist show, which is, like, hard to pull off. You know, it's from Spain. And the messaging of the show is all about like resistance and tearing down oppressive systems, but also like all the main characters are really morally complicated. Like they're not great people, but then because of that it has that like found family aspect, which you know I'm a sucker for.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I love the team. I love putting the team together and everyone's using all their specialties to like talk through, oh, I can do that. Or like, oh man, we need a way to do this. And someone's like, well, I can do that. And then they show them some cool new thing. And I'm like, oh man, gadgets. Or, oh man, smart people. Or like whatever it is. And, you know, and everyone, there's a lot of tension and conflict because they're not very good people, but they sort of learn to work together. And it gives you the sense of hope, like maybe we can win if we try and put our heads together. So like crime families, it's fun. So yeah, I feel like ultimately this book did scratch that itch of like, it's a family putting aside their differences to do a heist against you want a Robin Hood heist family, colorful, strong characters, sense of justice, sort of ticks all those boxes.
And we get, like, more of the backstory, too, of the villain, which I think... not really backstory of the villain, I should say, but more context to him. It's not just like, oh, he's a rich white dude, which we think at the beginning, but also, this is the man who's personally responsible for the imprisonment and then later death of the grandfather, Melvin. And so I really enjoyed how that came together at the end of, like, there's more than one reason to, like, take this guy down. It's like a revenge plot and a take down the big guy, revenge, Robin Hood mashup.
So yeah, so there were parts that we liked.
I really liked the romance. Like, there's not a ton of it, but it's there. And we get these three powerful women who all are loved and appreciated and supported by their partner. And we get to see the beginning of Clara and Melvin, and their love story is really beautiful. And we get to see the beginning of Addie and Cora together. And maybe that's another reason why I'm, like, so bitter that we didn't get more of Winston, is because we got these two wonderful, like, this is their meet cute. This is, like, how they operate as a family. Here's them being, like, sexy and intimate and, like, supporting each other. But we don't get Winston and Celia, like, established in the same way. But overall, I really appreciate that it wasn't, I don't know, like, it wasn't like you have love or you have family, or like you have money or you have love. It's like you can have all of it in this story.
Yeah, I think I also really, the flashback sequences, I think were actually my favorite. I felt like the character building and the pacing and even like the coloring was like warmer, which I liked. I really loved the grandparents. I felt like, because I feel like we got enough time to like really get to know them and establish their story, and it was really lovely and like tragic, and just it had a whole arc to it, their love story, that I really enjoyed and gave a lot of meat to the sort of present day action that was happening. And
yeah, shout out to Jordi Belair, who was the colorist. I think you're right. I think the flashbacks especially were like really beautifully done. But yeah, overall I'm excited to see this as a TV series and get more of that relationship building. Because the story does, like you said, have great bones, has great characters, but perhaps in a TV show, it could be more fleshed out and we can spend more time. We can have the camera stay on those emotional beats longer. And at the end of the day, that's all we want. We just want more. So a TV show will give us more.
Give us more!
Okay, so for people who enjoyed reading The Banks, what would you recommend they check out next?
I mentioned Casa de Papel, the Netflix show. Definitely start there. I would also recommend a movie called The Widows with Viola Davis. She's sort of the lead, but it's about the widows of these crime bosses. But they're not all bosses. Viola Davis is the wife of the crime boss, and then the wives of his sort of underlings. Their husbands all get killed, and the wives take it upon themselves to get revenge, but also to like kind of put things right. And it also taught me a lot about Chicago politics. I remember I saw it kind of early on when I moved to Chicago, and it explained a lot of things to me of like Chicago politics, you know, very long history with crime families. It goes way back. But yeah, really, really good. Viola Davis is great, obviously.
Okay, I mentioned earlier The Kitchen, which is another comic that Ming Doyle has illustrated. It's written by Ollie Masters, and I'm intrigued to read it. Similar to how the title of The Banks is like, what do you mean by The Banks? The Kitchen is about Hell's Kitchen in New York. Set in 1970s. And it's kind of similar to The Widows. Like, I think when you were talking about The Widows to me off mic, I was like getting it confused. I'm like, which movie was that? Because it's another movie of like women are running the show after their connected husband, something happens, blah, blah, blah. Another TKO Studios comic I'm looking forward to reading is Pound for Pound by Natalie Chaides. I might be pronouncing that wrong. And then another comic series. This one is definitely more like a traditional comic, but it's called Chew. And it's about a detective that can get psychic impressions from things he eats. It is quite disgusting at times, but it's enjoyable. I don't know. It's not a heist. It's like a cop show.
Wait, his name is Chew, and he chews things?
Yeah. His name is Tony Chew. CHU. And then there's a spin-off series, which I haven't read yet, about his sister. Also called Chew, but it's spelled CHEW. Yeah, I've only read like the first like 3 or 4 volumes of that. But it's been good so far. All right. Last but not least. Currently obsessed. Things that are bringing us joy. Things that are not related to what we talked about today, but we have to talk about anyways. For me, it's Our Flag Means Death.
Hell yeah!
It happened. Julia sat me down and we watched it all. We watched some episodes and I am part of the crew. Thank you. Good night.
I'm so happy. She really liked it.
It was really good.
And I was so jealous because we literally finished watching it. So Victoria's first experience of Our Flag Means Death ended 2 days before they announced season 2 was coming. She only had to suffer for 2 days. I waited for weeks. I'm very jealous. Okay, so I recently finished Ocean Vuong's poetry collection, Night Sky with Exit Wounds. And wow, can that man write a poem? Goddamn. Yeah, very, very good. And then this weekend I watched Stranger Things 4, finally. I waited until I was done with all my exams to like sit down and binge it. And so, yes, I am now, like everyone else, listening to Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush on repeat. Kate Bush is now at like the top of all the charts.
Yeah, I was listening to Switched on Pop. It's a music podcast, and they were kind of explaining like the phenomena of Kate Bush Running Up That Hill, like in the Stranger Things soundtrack. They talk with the people who scored all 4 seasons of it. They pull apart some of the instrumentation of it. But then they also talk, they mentioned it like has charted higher now than when it first was released. Mm-hmm. Back in the 90s?
80s. 86, I think. Like, she made the whole thing herself, and she has all the licensing rights, so she's making so much money from this song right now. I know. I'm like, yes, go Kate Bush. But yeah, she's making so much money from that song. But yeah, we're very happy for her.
Thank you for listening to Book Club with Julia and Victoria. We would love to hear your thoughts on this book or the topic we discussed, so you can share your review and recommendations with us on Instagram at BookClubWithJV, on our website, bookclubwithjv.com, or by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also visit our website for show notes with links to all of the recommendations and the things bringing us joy. If you don't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever podcast platform you are listening on so that you can be notified when our next episode is released. This episode was co-hosted and produced by myself, Victoria Bruick, along with Julia Clausen. Rebecca Gasme provides us with project management support. Our music is composed by Greg Bruick, and our logo was designed by Gabby Febland. Until next time, happy reading.